In the chaotic, ever-changing expanse of the warp, there exists a legend unlike any other, a figure whose name echoes across the realms of madness, whose actions have woven his tale into the very fabric of the immaterium. This is the story of Doomrider, a being whose existence defies the rules of the universe, whose exploits have made him both a legend and a terror within the galaxy. His name is feared, respected, and often whispered in awe, as few truly understand the full extent of his journey. But to understand Doomrider's rise, we must first venture into the heart of the warp itself, a place where time bends and reality fractures, a domain ruled by entities far older and far more dangerous than any mortal mind can comprehend. The immaterium is not a place for the faint of heart, nor for those who cling to the fragile veil of order. It is a realm where ambition, madness, and fate collide, often in ways that can never be predicted. Doomrider's story is tied not only to the warp, but to the galaxy at large. A time when ancient beings and vast legions waged war on the mortal realm. His journey intersects with that of forces whose very existence could reshape the balance of power across the stars. Yet, despite the vastness of the conflict around him, Doomrider carved out a place for himself within the madness. His path is one of raw power, chaotic energy, and a burning desire for freedom, a freedom found only by embracing the reckless forces of the warp itself. However, the tale of Doomrider is far from a simple one of chaotic rebellion. It is one of transformation, of rising beyond the mortal plane into something far darker and more unpredictable. But what exactly led him down this path? What forces guided him toward this legend? And most importantly, how did he become the warp's wildest and most enigmatic legend? These questions linger in the void, waiting to be answered. Doomrider's rise to notoriety is inextricably linked with several key figures and factions within the Warhammer 40k universe. His legend is shaped not just by his own actions, but by the very forces he has interacted with, the realms he has entered, and the individuals he has crossed paths with throughout his tumultuous journey. At the center of this story is the Chaos Space Marines, a faction of once elite warriors who have now fallen to the dark gods of the warp. These individuals, once champions of the Imperium, are marked by their betrayal, their fall from grace, and their descent into madness. Among them are those who would align themselves with various dark powers for reasons that range from personal ambition to the unshakable conviction that their new allegiance represents the only path to true power. Doomrider's interactions with these individuals are crucial as they provide the framework for much of the chaos that unfolds around him. Their presence in his story serves as a constant reminder of the shifting tides of loyalty and power within the universe, as well as the price of giving in to the temptations of the warp. Another key player in Doomrider's legend is the dark gods themselves. These powerful, malevolent entities have long sought to influence the mortal realm, each representing a different aspect of chaos. Khorne, the god of bloodshed and battle; Nurgle, the lord of decay and plague; Tzeentch, the changer of ways and master of fate; and Slaanesh, the dark deity of excess and pleasure. Though Doomrider's relationship with these gods is complex, their role in his story cannot be overstated. Their gifts and their curses are the catalysts for many of his decisions and actions, shaping his very being and guiding him towards a destiny that is as unpredictable as it is destructive. Whether by design or accident, Doomrider's path becomes intertwined with their whims, and his fate becomes bound to the forces of the warp in ways he could neither predict nor fully control. Alongside these dark powers, the followers of Chaos Space Marines play a pivotal role in shaping Doomrider's path. The cultists, warriors, and sorcerers who have pledged themselves to the Chaos Gods are essential in providing the support, both material and spiritual, that Doomrider needs to achieve his place in legend. These individuals are often as unpredictable as the forces they worship, and their motivations can range from pure devotion to blind fanaticism. The stories of these characters are just as varied as the gods they serve, and each one brings a different perspective to the overarching conflict that Doomrider is caught in. Equally important to the development of his legend are the forces of the Imperium, particularly the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's chosen warriors. While Doomrider's relationship with these figures is adversarial at best, their presence serves to define much of the context in which his story unfolds. The Imperium's relentless pursuit of its enemies and its uncompromising stance against the forces of chaos have led to countless clashes between the two sides, with Doomrider and his associates finding themselves at the heart of many of these violent confrontations. The Imperium's role in the wider galaxy cannot be ignored, as it provides the necessary foil against which the forces of chaos, Doomrider included, are defined. The warp itself, too, cannot be left out of this tale. This vast and unfathomable dimension of pure psychic energy is the source of power for chaos and the realm where many of the events surrounding Doomrider's rise take place. It is an unpredictable, ever-changing space where the laws of reality are bent and twisted to the whims of its denizens. Doomrider's interactions with the warp are crucial to his transformation from a mere mortal into a figure of legend, and the forces within this dimension shape his destiny in ways that few others can understand. Whether he is using the warp to fuel his power or being influenced by it in ways he cannot fully control, his connection to this realm defines much of who he is and what he becomes. Alongside these major players, there are countless smaller factions and individuals who play lesser but still significant roles in Doomrider's story. Whether they are rival chaos cults, mercenaries hired by his enemies, or those who simply find themselves caught in the chaos that surrounds him, each one contributes in their own way to the events that ultimately shape his path. These figures often serve as obstacles or allies in his journey, providing additional layers of complexity to the ongoing conflict. Some of them may even come to see Doomrider as a figure of worship or fear, further cementing his status as a being whose presence resonates across the galaxy. Finally, there is the broader context of the galaxy at large. The Imperium, the forces of chaos, and all the other factions vying for power exist in a galaxy that is in a constant state of war, where the boundaries between life and death, order and chaos, are constantly shifting. In this galaxy, Doomrider's actions take on an even greater significance, as his story intersects with the larger events unfolding around him. Whether through his direct involvement in these conflicts, or through the ripples his legend creates, Doomrider's place in the grand tapestry of the galaxy is undeniable. His rise to prominence is not just the story of one individual, but a reflection of the larger forces at play in the Warhammer 40k universe. Doomrider's journey toward becoming one of the Warp's most notorious legends did not emerge from a vacuum. It was shaped by the turbulent and destructive forces of the galaxy, the rise of chaos, and the allure of untamed power. His path was forged in the fires of war, where ancient and primal instincts mingled with the burning desire for freedom and revenge. To understand the origins of his rise, one must first understand the broader context of the galaxy and the events that were unfolding at the time. The galaxy was a place of constant upheaval, where civilizations were in a state of perpetual conflict. The Imperium of Man, a once great empire stretching across the stars, was teetering on the edge of collapse. The Emperor's vision for humanity was one of unity and peace, but the bitter reality of endless war, treachery, and betrayal had corrupted his creation. The Imperium was surrounded by enemies, both external and internal, that threatened its very survival. Among these enemies were the forces of chaos, the ancient and powerful entities that sought to unseat the Imperium and impose their own twisted vision of reality. Chaos had been growing in strength for centuries, feeding off the despair and suffering that permeated the galaxy. The Warp, the Immaterium, was the domain of these dark gods, and their influence spread across every corner of existence. They offered power, immortality, and freedom to those brave enough, or foolish enough, to accept their gifts. Many had already fallen under their sway, either out of ambition or desperation. The lure of chaos had drawn entire legions of soldiers, sorcerers, and zealots into its fold, all seeking the dark power that could free them from the chains of mortality and order. Against this backdrop, the rise of Doomrider was not simply the result of a single event, but rather a series of intertwined factors that led to the perfect storm. His journey was not one of simple choice or ambition. It was the culmination of his environment, the people around him, and the dire circumstances of the galaxy at the time. Doomrider began his journey as part of a larger group, one that was entrenched in the brutal realities of galactic warfare. This group, like many others, was drawn into the ever-widening conflict between the Imperium and the forces of chaos. The war was relentless, with battles fought on every front, and no one was spared the horrors of the conflict. Those who fought in this war were shaped by it, their spirits hardened by the ceaseless destruction around them. It was in this crucible that Doomrider began his path. The reality of war served as both a crucible and a catalyst for those who would eventually align themselves with the forces of chaos. The endless bloodshed and betrayal created an environment ripe for those seeking to escape the pain of their existence. Those who fought and died in the name of the Emperor or their own causes often found little solace in the aftermath of battle. The oppressive atmosphere of unending conflict wore down the souls of those who fought in it, leaving them vulnerable to the whispers of the warp. As the war escalated, so too did the reach of chaos. It seeped into the minds and hearts of those caught in its path, offering them an escape from the horrors of war, an allure that promised power beyond mortal comprehension. The destructive forces of chaos were not just external, but internal as well, feeding off the fears and desires of those who came into contact with them. This corrupting influence was everywhere, and it was this environment that shaped Doomrider's transformation. Doomrider's path was not predetermined. He was not born with an inherent desire to embrace chaos, nor was he fated to become a legend in the warp. His journey began with a single pivotal moment, a choice that set him on a collision course with destiny. But the forces that surrounded him, the turmoil of the galaxy, and the growing strength of chaos all played their parts in steering him toward the warp's embrace. The rise of Doomrider is also inextricably linked to the mythos of the Chaos Space Marines. These once loyal servants of the Emperor had, like so many others, found themselves betrayed and cast aside by the very institution they had once served. The Imperium, consumed by its own rigidity and paranoia, had turned against its former champions, leaving them to be swept up by the seductive embrace of chaos. The Chaos Space Marines, in their fallen state, became some of the most powerful and influential figures in the galaxy, their actions shaping the course of history. It was within this new order that Doomrider found himself entangled, drawn into a movement that sought to overthrow the Emperor and bring about the triumph of chaos. Yet even as Doomrider moved closer to chaos, the Imperium's relentless pursuit of its enemies continued. The two forces were locked in an eternal struggle, with neither side willing to yield. The Emperor's vision of humanity's future, as rigid and unyielding as it was, could not contain the wild chaos of the warp. The battle for dominance was far from over, and it was this backdrop of conflict that propelled Doomrider's rise. In this chaotic environment, Doomrider was shaped by the experiences of those around him. He was influenced by the powers that ruled the warp, by the lessons learned from battle, and by the relentless pursuit of freedom in a galaxy bound by war. The galaxy itself, teeming with hostile factions and opposing forces, would be the proving ground for Doomrider's transformation into a legend. The threads of fate wove together in such a way that his path was set and his destiny was sealed, whether by choice, chance, or the whims of the warp itself. Ultimately, Doomrider's rise was not an isolated incident, but a product of his time, shaped by the very forces that were in constant conflict throughout the galaxy. His story is not just the tale of one man, but the reflection of the tumultuous, ever-changing landscape of the galaxy. It is a story written in blood, betrayal, and the raw desire for power, a story that could not have unfolded in any other way. His path was forged by the very conflicts that shaped the galaxy itself, and it is these forces, these events, and these conditions that set the stage for Doomrider's rise to become the Warp's wildest legend. Doomrider's path toward becoming one of the Warp's most feared and celebrated figures was not one of sudden transformation, but rather a gradual progression, marked by several significant milestones that shaped his legendary status. His rise is a tale of growing chaos, destruction, and an increasing embrace of the forces that governed the Immaterium. Throughout this journey, his feats and actions garnered him fame, and the mark he left on the galaxy grew deeper with each passing day. In the beginning, Doomrider was a figure who, like many others, was swept into the vast currents of war and conflict that plagued the galaxy. His initial acts of violence, though nothing extraordinary in themselves, were emblematic of the times in which he lived. The galaxy was in a state of constant upheaval, and the battles he fought were simply a microcosm of the greater war that raged between the Imperium and the forces of chaos. It was during these early encounters that Doomrider's potential was first realized, as his ability to survive against overwhelming odds became apparent. His early victories, though minor in the grand scope of the conflict, were a signal that he was no ordinary combatant, and that his future would be one of great consequence. As his name spread, so too did his involvement in larger, more impactful engagements. He began to participate in more significant battles, joining the forces of Chaos Space Marines in their campaigns against the Imperium. His role in these wars was pivotal, often finding himself at the heart of the most dangerous and chaotic conflicts. The scale of his actions grew, and with each battle, he cemented his reputation as a figure who thrived in the most brutal and unforgiving situations. His presence on the battlefield became a symbol of defiance, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, there were those who would stand against the might of the Imperium and Chaos alike. As Doomrider's fame spread, his legend began to evolve. It was not just his combat prowess that set him apart, but his ability to navigate the shifting allegiances and ever-changing power structures within the forces of chaos. He began to attract followers, warriors who admired his fearless approach and his refusal to bow to the traditional structures of power. These followers were drawn to his sense of freedom, his rejection of the rules that governed the Chaos factions, and his ability to carve out his own destiny within the Warp. This growing influence saw Doomrider align himself with various factions within Chaos, particularly those aligned with Khorne, the Blood God. His relationship with the forces of Khorne was one of mutual respect, as both shared a thirst for battle and destruction. His growing prowess as a warrior made him an asset to the bloodthirsty followers of Khorne, and he quickly became a leader within their ranks. However, Doomrider was never content to be simply another pawn in the greater game of chaos. He sought to carve out his own place in the galaxy, one that would elevate him beyond the reach of the established power structures of chaos. Throughout this period, Doomrider's influence expanded. He became known for his relentless pursuit of battle, never hesitating to charge into the heart of enemy formations, causing chaos and fear wherever he went. His mastery of combat, coupled with his fearlessness, made him a terror on the battlefield, and his name became synonymous with the destructive force of chaos itself. But as his fame spread, so too did the complexity of his relationships with the other powers of the Warp. Though Doomrider's connection with Khorne was strong, he was not entirely bound by the Blood God's will. He was not content to be a mere instrument of destruction, and his ambitions grew beyond the confines of any one god. It was during this time that he began to experiment with the darker aspects of the Warp, seeking to harness its powers for his own gain. His dabbling in forbidden sorcery and his connection with the Warp's more chaotic elements pushed him further down the path toward his eventual transformation. This period of experimentation was crucial in shaping Doomrider's legend. He pushed the boundaries of what was possible, taking risks that few others would dare to take. His attempts to manipulate the warp itself were both reckless and visionary, and though many of his experiments were failures, they set the stage for the moment when he would truly become something more than just a warrior. It was during these years of exploration that Doomrider's true power began to take form, as the warp itself began to take notice of him. The forces of chaos, ever eager to manipulate and shape those who would serve them, saw in Doomrider a figure of great potential. As his connection with the warp deepened, Doomrider became more than just a mortal warrior. He became a being of the warp, a creature whose very essence was tied to the chaos that ruled the immaterium. His transformation, however, was not without its costs. The more he embraced the power of the warp, the more his humanity faded, replaced by the raw energy of the immaterium. His body became a vessel for the chaotic forces that he had long sought to control, and his mind, once filled with purpose and ambition, became more attuned to the madness of the warp. At the same time, Doomrider's actions continued to resonate throughout the galaxy. His exploits, while still rooted in battle and destruction, began to take on a more mythical quality. He was no longer just a warrior. He was a symbol of the chaos that defined the universe. His name was spoken with reverence and fear, and his deeds were whispered about in the dark corners of the galaxy. His rise was not just the story of one man, but the embodiment of the greater forces that shaped the galaxy. Throughout this period, Doomrider's legend continued to grow. He became known not just for his skill in battle, but for his ability to inspire fear and awe in those who crossed his path. His presence on the battlefield was a harbinger of destruction, a sign that the forces of chaos were at work. Yet, even as his fame spread, Doomrider remained a figure of mystery, a being whose true motives and ambitions were known only to himself. He was no longer just a part of the greater struggle between the Imperium and chaos. He had become something more, a figure whose legend would transcend the very fabric of the galaxy itself. Through his relentless pursuit of battle, his defiance of the established order, and his growing connection with the warp, Doomrider became a symbol of the wild, untamed forces of the immaterium. His journey was marked by feats of violence, but it was also a journey of transformation, a transformation that would eventually lead him to become the warp's wildest legend. His story, shaped by the chaotic forces of the galaxy, was one of perpetual motion, always in flux, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Each victory, each battle, each moment of madness brought him closer to his ultimate destiny, a destiny that would see him become a being of legend, feared and revered throughout the galaxy. At the heart of Doomrider's transformation into the warp's wildest legend lies a single decisive moment, one that marked the irreversible shift from mortal man to a being woven into the very fabric of the immaterium. It was a moment that could not have been predicted, nor could it have been avoided, for it was driven by the irresistible pull of the warp and the consequences of his own unrelenting pursuit of power and freedom. Doomrider had always walked a fine line between destruction and control, ever seeking to break free of the constraints that bound him. His life had been one of chaos and violent transformation, shaped by his growing connection with the forces of the immaterium. But as his ambition and thirst for power reached their apex, he made a fateful decision: to sacrifice his mortal form entirely in order to become a living conduit for the raw power of the warp. This decision marked the defining moment of his existence, the point where Doomrider was no longer simply a warrior or a figure of legend. He became something far more. In the heart of a violent campaign, Doomrider faced an existential crossroads. His bond with the forces of chaos had already grown powerful, yet he was still confined within the limits of his human form. The forces that he had allied with, those who had drawn him into their fold, whispered promises of greater power, untold freedom, and ultimate liberation from the chains of mortality. But this freedom came at a price, one that required an irreversible decision. It was during this campaign, amidst the throes of battle and bloodshed, that Doomrider was presented with an opportunity to transcend his physical body and embrace the boundless, chaotic potential of the warp in its purest form. The moment of transformation came when Doomrider was faced with an ancient and forbidden artifact, one that had been lost to the galaxy for centuries. It was an object of great power, said to have been created by the ancient sorcerers who once controlled the darkest arts of the warp. This artifact, a relic of immense significance, held the key to transcending the physical world and entering the true domain of the warp. It was a vessel that could channel the energies of the immaterium and shape them to the will of its wielder. Doomrider, consumed by his desire to transcend the limitations of his human form, saw in this artifact the means to fulfill his ambition. The choice was clear. He could continue his life as a mortal warrior, fighting in the name of chaos, but bound to the very flesh that had always held him back, or he could seize this moment and embrace the raw, unfiltered power of the warp, becoming something more than human, something that existed outside the boundaries of mortal comprehension. The decision was not an easy one. Doomrider had already become known as a terror on the battlefield, his reputation as a warrior and leader growing with each conflict. But the constant pursuit of power had begun to weigh on him. He had already forged alliances with the Chaos Gods and had grown ever closer to the essence of the warp itself. But something was still missing. The limitations of his human form continued to be an obstacle, no matter how many battles he won or how many enemies he crushed underfoot. In the deepest recesses of his mind, Doomrider knew that he could never truly be free unless he transcended the very body that had once defined him. So, in a moment of utter conviction, he made his choice to cast aside his humanity and become a being of the warp, embracing the chaotic energies that flowed through the immaterium. It was a decision that would change the course of his existence forever. The transformation was not immediate, nor was it without its consequences. As Doomrider embraced the warp's power, his body was consumed by the immaterium, his mortal form disintegrating into nothingness. What remained was no longer truly a man, but a being of pure energy, a living manifestation of the chaos that had consumed him. His mind, once a vessel for mortal thoughts, was now a conduit for the boundless, ever-shifting forces of the warp. His body, once bound to the physical world, was now an extension of the immaterium itself. The cost of this transformation was immense. Doomrider's humanity was stripped away, and in its place was a being who could no longer fully comprehend the nature of reality as it had once been. The emotions, desires, and memories that had once defined him became distant echoes, replaced by the endless, all-consuming presence of the warp. But despite this loss, Doomrider felt a sense of liberation unlike any he had ever known. He was no longer a mere mortal, bound by the constraints of flesh and time. He was now a force of pure chaos, a being whose very essence was entwined with the vast energies of the immaterium. This act of transformation did not go unnoticed. The gods of chaos, ever watchful of those who sought to harness the power of the warp, took immediate interest in Doomrider's ascension. His decision to become one with the immaterium was seen as both a triumph and a challenge, for in his transformation, Doomrider had become something new, an entity whose power could rival even the gods themselves. He was no longer merely a servant of chaos. He was a force of the warp, a being who could shape reality according to his will. The gods of chaos, recognizing his potential, extended their favor, granting him abilities beyond mortal comprehension and further cementing his place in the warp's pantheon. Doomrider's transformation did not stop at the loss of his physical form. As his connection to the immaterium deepened, his very nature began to shift. His appearance became ever more chaotic, a reflection of the warp itself. His once human features twisted and warped, reflecting the erratic and unpredictable nature of the immaterium. His form became a terrifying blend of energy and matter, a constant flux that defied the laws of reality. His very presence in the galaxy became an anomaly, a sign that the boundaries between the mortal realm and the immaterium had become dangerously thin. The decision to embrace the warp had irrevocably changed Doomrider. His body and mind were no longer his own, for they were now bound to the chaotic energies that flowed through the immaterium. He was no longer a mere man or even a warrior. He was an embodiment of chaos, a living testament to the boundless potential of the warp. And with this transformation came new power, new opportunities, and new enemies. The galaxy, already rife with conflict, now had to contend with a force that existed beyond the boundaries of reality itself. In the wake of his decision, Doomrider's reputation grew even further. No longer just a warrior of chaos, he had become a living legend, a being whose name was feared and revered across the galaxy. His transformation had given him a place in the annals of history, one that would echo through the ages. The warp, with all its infinite possibilities, had embraced him fully, and in doing so, Doomrider became one of its most powerful and unpredictable champions. This key moment in his life, the decision to embrace the warp and transcend his mortal form, was the pivotal point that answered the question of how Doomrider became the warp's wildest legend. His transformation was not just a change in form, it was the birth of something new, something that could never again be bound by the rules of the material world. He had become something more than human, something more than mortal, a being of the warp, free to shape the galaxy as he saw fit. Once Doomrider underwent his dramatic transformation, casting aside his mortal form to become a being of the warp, the consequences were not limited to his own existence. His actions and newfound power sent ripples throughout the galaxy, creating shockwaves that affected not only the forces of chaos, but also the Imperium, the other factions of the galaxy, and the very fabric of reality itself. Doomrider's emergence as a being of the warp represented an escalation in the ongoing conflict between the forces of chaos and the Imperium. His powers, now fueled by the Immaterium, made him a new and terrifying force in the galaxy, one whose influence was not confined to any one battle or conflict. He was no longer just a warrior or a general. He was an embodiment of chaos itself, a living weapon whose very presence signaled the coming of untold destruction. His ability to reshape reality, bend the laws of physics, and command the raw power of the warp made him an unparalleled threat, one that the Imperium could no longer ignore. The first and most immediate effect of Doomrider's transformation was felt on the battlefield. As a mortal, he had already been a force to be reckoned with, but as a creature of the warp, his abilities were magnified exponentially. No longer constrained by the limitations of a physical form, Doomrider could now move faster than the eye could follow, phase in and out of reality, and strike with the ferocity of a hurricane. His mere presence in battle was enough to demoralize and terrify enemies as the air around him crackled with raw, chaotic energy. Entire armies found themselves helpless against the storm that followed in his wake, unable to match his speed, strength, or the sheer unpredictability of his actions. But his influence went beyond the immediate destruction he caused in battle. Doomrider's transformation marked the point at which the warp began to exert a greater influence on the material world. His very being was a conduit for the Immaterium, and his connection to it allowed him to manipulate the energies of the warp with devastating effect. The lines between the physical and the Immaterium began to blur wherever he went. Fissures in reality opened up, unstable rifts that allowed the power of the warp to leak into the material universe. These rifts often resulted in catastrophic consequences. Landscapes warped and twisted, entire cities were consumed by madness, and pockets of space were erased from existence entirely. Doomrider's ability to shape the Immaterium itself was one of the defining features of his newfound power. He was able to manipulate the energies of the warp to create pockets of reality where the laws of time and space no longer applied. These rifts were not merely physical anomalies. They were manifestations of Doomrider's own will, extensions of his desire for chaos and destruction. The more he wielded the power of the warp, the more he left his mark on the galaxy, creating zones of instability that threatened to unravel the fabric of the universe. Entire systems were destabilized by his presence, and the very nature of reality began to shift in ways that no one could predict. The Imperium, which had already been struggling with the constant threat of chaos, found itself facing an entirely new kind of enemy in Doomrider. His presence in the galaxy was an affront to the very order that the Imperium sought to maintain. His ability to manipulate the warp and his unyielding defiance of the Emperor's rule forced the Imperium to reconsider its strategies in dealing with the forces of chaos. In the past, the Imperium had relied on its legions of Astartes and its vast fleets to combat the forces of the warp. But Doomrider's unique nature made him an unpredictable and terrifying threat. The Imperium's military strategies, no matter how advanced, were powerless against a being who existed outside the normal constraints of reality. The influence of Doomrider also extended to the factions of Chaos themselves. While the Chaos gods had always been present in the warp, their influence over the material world was often indirect, mediated through their mortal followers. Doomrider, however, was a being of pure warp energy, and his actions carried the weight of the gods themselves. His rise to power marked a shift in the balance of power within the forces of chaos, as his newfound abilities and his growing legend began to overshadow even the most powerful of chaos warlords. His influence within the ranks of chaos was unparalleled, and he quickly became a symbol of the untamable nature of the warp. Other chaos factions, particularly those aligned with Khorne, began to rally to Doomrider's banner. They saw in him the embodiment of the warp's purest form, a being who had transcended the limitations of the material world and become something greater. Khorne's followers, with their unrelenting thirst for battle and destruction, found in Doomrider a kindred spirit, and they joined him in his campaigns across the galaxy. His connection to Khorne, while not absolute, further cemented his position within the ranks of chaos and granted him access to the bloodthirsty forces that Khorne commanded. Doomrider, with his new power, was able to direct these forces with terrifying efficiency, leading them into battles that wreaked havoc on entire sectors of the galaxy. However, Doomrider's influence was not limited to the immediate conflict between the Imperium and Chaos. His actions had a more profound, long-term effect on the galaxy as a whole. The growing instability in the fabric of reality, the breaches in space and time, and the increasing influence of the warp began to have lasting consequences. These rifts in reality became more frequent and more widespread, destabilizing entire star systems and rendering large swaths of the galaxy uninhabitable. The warp itself seemed to grow stronger in the wake of Doomrider's actions, as his very presence seemed to magnify the power of the Immaterium and push the boundaries of what was possible. The influence of Doomrider also had an effect on the people of the galaxy, particularly those living in the more chaotic and war-torn regions. His name became synonymous with fear, power, and madness, and his actions sparked rebellions, uprisings, and a growing cult of followers who believed in the power of the warp. These cults, while not as organized as the larger factions of Chaos, became a growing force in the galaxy, worshipping Doomrider as a living god and spreading his influence far and wide. His growing legend also attracted the attention of various xenos factions, some of whom saw his actions as an opportunity to further their own goals, while others sought to destroy him before his power could grow any further. In essence, Doomrider's rise as the warp's wildest legend was not just the story of one man's transformation. It was a harbinger of a new era in the galaxy. His actions, driven by his newfound powers and his unrelenting quest for chaos, had profound and far-reaching consequences that shaped the galaxy in ways that were both destructive and transformative. His presence in the galaxy destabilized the very foundation of reality itself, ushering in a new age of uncertainty, fear, and limitless potential. The galaxy would never be the same again, and Doomrider, the being who had crossed the threshold between the mortal and the immaterium, would forever be remembered as one of the most influential and dangerous figures to ever exist. Doomrider's rise to become the warp's wildest legend is marked by several unique aspects that have captivated the Warhammer 40k community. While his story is one of transformation, chaos, and power, what truly sets him apart from other figures in the Warhammer universe is the way in which he embodies the raw, untamed nature of the warp itself. His existence goes beyond the ordinary lore of Chaos champions, for he is not merely a servant of the gods or a warrior. He is a manifestation of the immaterium, a chaotic force in his own right. This aspect of Doomrider's being is the subject of much discussion among fans, as his very nature challenges the boundaries of what is possible in the Warhammer 40k setting. One of the most talked about aspects of Doomrider's legend is the manner in which his transformation represents the complete rejection of mortality. Many Chaos figures are either powerful mortals or once human entities who have been corrupted by the gods of Chaos, but Doomrider's story is different. His decision to abandon his human form entirely, to become a being that exists purely in the warp, is an extraordinary departure from the typical path of Chaos worshippers. While some may see this as a form of evolution or ascension, others view it as a tragic loss of self, an obliteration of the very essence of what it means to be human. This duality is a key element of Doomrider's character, one that is often debated among fans. Some argue that his rise is an example of the ultimate freedom, the embracing of one's true chaotic nature, while others see it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of forsaking one's humanity in pursuit of power. His connection to the warp is another unique and highly discussed aspect of his legend. Doomrider is not just another mortal who made a pact with the gods of Chaos. He is a being who has become one with the immaterium. The warp, as a dimension of raw psychic energy, is inherently unstable, and those who are drawn into it are often at risk of losing themselves to madness. Doomrider, however, represents a new paradigm in this connection. He has not just been corrupted by the warp, he has melded with it, becoming a living extension of its chaotic forces. This transformation is one of the reasons why Doomrider is considered a being of immense power and unpredictability. Unlike other figures in the Warhammer 40k universe, who may draw power from the warp but are still bound by their physical form, Doomrider is untethered from the limitations of the material world. His form exists only as an ephemeral extension of the warp itself, a creature of pure energy and chaotic force. This distinction makes him one of the most feared and enigmatic figures in the setting, as his power is virtually limitless and beyond the understanding of most mortals. Additionally, Doomrider's vehicle, often referred to as his warp steed or chaos bike, is another defining feature of his legend. The bike, like its rider, is a fusion of organic and technological elements, twisted by the forces of the warp into something both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Fans often debate the origins and abilities of Doomrider's bike, speculating that it is more than just a vehicle. Some suggest it is a living, sentient creature bound to the warp, while others believe it is an extension of Doomrider's own will, capable of warping reality as he does. The bike is not just a tool for destruction, it is an icon of Doomrider's entire persona. It is a symbol of his embrace of the chaos that defines him, moving at impossible speeds and tearing through the fabric of reality itself as it races across the battlefield. The sheer destructive potential of the bike is a subject of much admiration among fans, as it serves as a tangible representation of Doomrider's raw, unrestrained power. Another fascinating aspect of Doomrider's legend is the way in which his name and mythos have evolved within the Warhammer 40k community. While Doomrider may not be as well known as other Chaos figures like Abaddon or Horus, his cult following is considerable. Fans often discuss his role as a symbol of rebellion, freedom, and the untamed forces of the warp. His rise to legend status has become a form of expression for those who reject the rigid structures of the Imperium and embrace the idea of chaotic, unrestrained power. Doomrider's followers, many of whom are drawn to his image as a figure of freedom and destruction, see in him the ultimate expression of individualism and autonomy. This aspect of his character is one of the reasons why Doomrider has resonated so strongly with the Warhammer 40k community, particularly those who feel disconnected from the larger power structures in the galaxy. In the broader context of the Warhammer 40k universe, Doomrider is often seen as a representation of the dangers of absolute freedom. He is a figure who transcends all boundaries, embracing the chaos of the warp and casting aside any semblance of control or order. His legend speaks to the inherent danger of unchecked ambition, a theme that is central to many of the stories in the Warhammer 40k setting. Doomrider's wildness, his complete rejection of boundaries, has made him a tragic hero for some and a cautionary tale for others. The debate about whether Doomrider's transformation is a triumph or a tragedy is a major point of discussion among fans, with many differing opinions on the nature of his ascension and what it means for the galaxy. Furthermore, Doomrider's unique position as a Chaos champion who operates outside the influence of any one specific Chaos god is another interesting and much debated aspect of his character. While many other Chaos Space Marines are directly tied to one of the four major gods, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, or Slaanesh, Doomrider is often seen as a chaotic force in and of himself, a being who embodies the unpredictable and volatile nature of the warp. This aspect of his character challenges the traditional understanding of chaos in the Warhammer 40k universe, where the gods are typically the dominant influences on their followers. Doomrider's independence from the influence of any single god makes him an anomaly in the eyes of both Chaos and the Imperium. His autonomy allows him to pursue his own chaotic agenda, unbound by the whims of any particular deity, and this freedom is one of the most unique and compelling aspects of his legend. Finally, Doomrider's enduring presence in Warhammer 40k discussions highlights his lasting impact on the community. While he may not be the most prominent figure in the lore, his influence is felt strongly in fan discussions, fan art, and even in unofficial lore and stories created by the community. He represents something fundamental about the Warhammer 40k universe, the tension between order and chaos, freedom and destruction, life and death. Fans have continued to embrace and explore Doomrider's mythos, adding to his legend and ensuring that his place in the warp's wild history remains firmly cemented. In summary, Doomrider's story is one of unique transformation and boundless potential. From his absolute rejection of mortality to his embodiment of the warp's raw power, Doomrider represents the chaos and freedom that so often defines the Warhammer 40k universe. His ability to transcend the limits of mortal existence and reshape reality itself has made him one of the most captivating and talked about figures in the lore. The discussions surrounding his rise to legend status, his connection to the warp, and his role as a symbol of freedom and destruction continue to fuel interest in his character, ensuring that Doomrider's legacy remains as wild and untamed as the warp itself. Throughout Doomrider's journey, he crossed paths with many powerful and formidable figures, some of whom were just as dedicated to the ideals of chaos, while others stood as representatives of opposing forces, locked in a battle against the very thing Doomrider sought to embrace. Among those he clashed with, one of the most notable is a figure whose own ambitions and ruthless pursuit of power made him a prime antagonist to Doomrider, the Chaos Lord, known as Fabius Bile. Fabius Bile was a master of genetic manipulation, a former member of the Emperor's Children Legion, and a figure who sought to perfect the human form, often at the cost of morality and decency. His obsession with enhancing the human body, blending science with dark rituals, made him a controversial figure within the Chaos Space Marine factions. Unlike many of his peers who followed the will of a particular Chaos god, Bile was more interested in the scientific and genetic aspects of the warp, viewing the gods as mere tools to accomplish his own aims rather than as figures of worship. His cold, calculating mind was driven by an insatiable need to improve and perfect the creatures around him, often through horrific experiments. He was obsessed with achieving perfection, something that was never truly attainable, but which became an endless quest that dominated his existence. Bile's intellect and ambition made him a dangerous figure in the galaxy, and while Doomrider embodied chaos and freedom, Bile's motives were rooted in control and manipulation. Doomrider's raw, unbridled energy and his willingness to throw himself into the chaos of the warp were in stark contrast to Bile's clinical, methodical approach to power. The two were polar opposites in many ways, but both were dangerous in their own right. Bile, with his genius and cold ambition, was a force that sought to understand and control the very essence of life, while Doomrider rejected any such attempt to shape the galaxy to a specific vision, whether that vision was for destruction or for perfection. In their clashes, these differences came to a head, as each fought for what they believed to be the proper path forward. Fabius Bile's strength lay in his intelligence and knowledge of genetic manipulation. He was capable of creating terrifying engineered warriors capable of withstanding the worst of the galactic horrors. His creation of enhanced warriors, using his understanding of the warp and his own twisted experiments, made him a formidable foe. His knowledge was his greatest weapon, as he sought to change the fundamental nature of the universe, bending it to his will through science and sorcery combined. Bile's greatest weakness, however, was his inability to recognize that true perfection could never be achieved. His obsession with improving life through his experiments often led him to underestimate the chaotic and unpredictable nature of the universe. He failed to see that his creations, no matter how powerful, could never escape the entropy that came with the very forces he sought to control. The conflict between Doomrider and Fabius Bile was not one of simple violence or physical confrontation. It was a clash of ideologies. Doomrider represented the chaotic, wild nature of the warp, the unpredictable and destructive force that defied control. In contrast, Bile sought order through manipulation, trying to impose a cold, calculated vision upon the galaxy. Doomrider reveled in freedom, while Bile sought perfection, and the two could not be further apart in their goals. The personal animosity between them grew as their paths continued to intersect, with Doomrider attacking Bile's creations and Bile seeing Doomrider's uncontrollable nature as a challenge to his own meticulous, calculated approach to the future. Doomrider's raw power was a sharp contrast to Bile's precision, and their confrontations often saw the two engaging in brutal battles, where Doomrider's unstoppable energy met Bile's carefully crafted horrors. One key battle between them took place in the aftermath of one of Bile's more ambitious genetic projects, a horrific attempt to combine the best traits of both Astartes and the chaos-infused mutants of the warp. Bile believed that his enhanced warriors could eventually rival the finest creations of the warp itself, and in doing so, secure his place as one of the galaxy's foremost powers. Doomrider, however, saw this as an abomination, an attempt to control and constrain the very essence of chaos, and he sought to destroy it. During their clash, Doomrider proved the inefficacy of Bile's creations, breaking through his genetic abominations with ease. His chaotic energy and unrestrained fury were more than a match for Bile's engineered warriors, showing once again that the unpredictability of the warp could not be captured, nor could it be controlled. In the aftermath of the battle, Bile's creations were left in ruins, and Doomrider once again proved the raw power of the immaterium over science and calculated design. Bile's weakness was apparent. His creations, no matter how advanced, were ultimately flawed by their rigid nature. They could not compete with the raw, unfiltered power of chaos itself. However, the encounter also revealed a deeper vulnerability in Doomrider's approach. While his chaos-driven destruction was powerful, it was also ultimately self-destructive in its recklessness. Bile, while calculating and rigid, had a long-term vision that Doomrider lacked. His obsession with control and perfection may have been misguided, but it had provided him with the discipline to plan and to build, qualities Doomrider, as a being of chaotic power, lacked. This inability to think beyond immediate destruction was a flaw that Doomrider had yet to overcome. In their continued clashes, Bile would often take advantage of Doomrider's unpredictability, setting traps and using his creations to create chaos, and in doing so, gain the upper hand when Doomrider's impulsiveness worked against him. While Doomrider's battles with Fabius Bile were intense and defining moments in his story, They also highlighted some of the larger themes of Warhammer 40k, namely the struggle between chaos and order and the unyielding clash of opposing philosophies. For Doomrider, the ultimate freedom and wildness of the warp were the only truths that mattered, while for Bile, the pursuit of perfection through scientific mastery was the only way to achieve true power. Their battles were not just a contest of strength, but a representation of these larger ideological divides, and as such, they have become some of the most iconic moments in the lore surrounding Doomrider. Fabius Bile's impact on Doomrider's journey cannot be understated. While Doomrider's path was one of constant chaos and destruction, Bile's presence forced him to confront the limitations of his own philosophy and the unpredictable nature of his power. In turn, Bile's obsession with perfection and control was brought to its knees by the raw force of chaos that Doomrider wielded. Their encounters were a testament to the eternal struggle between opposing forces, one seeking to impose control and order, and the other embracing the freedom of chaos and the inevitable destruction that comes with it. Doomrider's rise to become the Warp's wildest legend is shrouded in mystery, and many aspects of his story remain unresolved, giving rise to numerous theories and questions that fuel fan discussions. Some of these unresolved issues pertain to the nature of his transformation, the full extent of his powers, and the role he plays in the grand scheme of the Warp and the galaxy. These questions have sparked passionate debates within the Warhammer 40k community, with fans constantly seeking to piece together the true nature of Doomrider's legend. One of the most debated aspects of Doomrider's story is the precise nature of his transformation. While it is widely accepted that Doomrider abandoned his mortal form to become a being of the Warp, the mechanics of this process remain unclear. How exactly did Doomrider achieve such a radical change? Was it an intentional act, a calculated decision, or was it the result of a twist of fate? Some theorists suggest that Doomrider's transformation may have been the result of a pact with one or more of the Chaos Gods, while others believe it was a self-driven act of empowerment, with Doomrider deliberately rejecting his humanity to become something greater. These theories raise important questions about Doomrider's relationship with the Chaos Gods and whether they played a direct role in his ascension. Did he make a conscious choice to align himself with the Warp's energies, or did he become an unwilling vessel for the chaotic forces that he sought to control? The ambiguity surrounding his transformation has led to a variety of interpretations, each offering a different perspective on the motives behind his ascension. Another unresolved question revolves around Doomrider's continued connection to the material universe. While he is often described as a being of pure warp energy, his actions suggest that he retains some degree of influence over the physical world. How does Doomrider maintain his existence outside of the immaterium? Is he a permanent manifestation of chaos, or does his form flicker between the material and immaterium at will? Some fans speculate that Doomrider is not entirely separate from the physical world, but instead exists in a state of constant flux, shifting between realities as he sees fit. Others believe that his form is tied to the Warp itself, and his actions in the material universe are mere extensions of his chaotic will. The ambiguity of his existence fuels speculation about his true nature and what he represents in the larger context of chaos. Furthermore, the question of Doomrider's role within the broader structure of chaos remains a point of contention. While it is clear that he has a close connection to the forces of chaos, especially those aligned with Khorne, his position within the hierarchy of chaos is never fully defined. Is Doomrider a servant of the Chaos Gods, or does he exist outside their influence? Some theories suggest that he is a renegade, a figure who has transcended the traditional allegiances of chaos and is now a force unto himself. His independence from the will of the Chaos Gods is one of the most unique aspects of his character, and many fans debate whether he is truly free or simply another pawn in the larger game of chaos. His defiance of the established order within the Warp raises questions about his ultimate goals and whether he seeks to overthrow the gods themselves or simply exist as a chaotic force that embodies the raw energy of the immaterium. Another popular theory revolves around the possibility that Doomrider's transformation and actions are part of a larger, more intricate plan. Some fans speculate that Doomrider is not simply an agent of chaos, but rather a figure whose purpose is tied to the ultimate fate of the galaxy. Is Doomrider an essential piece in the coming end of days, a harbinger of the final conflict that will reshape the universe? His ability to manipulate the warp and his chaotic, unpredictable nature make him a potential catalyst for the ultimate destruction of both the Imperium and chaos itself. Could Doomrider, in his quest for freedom, inadvertently trigger an event that causes the collapse of reality as we know it? This theory raises the possibility that Doomrider's actions are not just those of a random agent of chaos, but rather that he is part of a larger cosmic scheme, one that has yet to be fully revealed. The role of Doomrider's followers also remains a subject of speculation. While it is known that he attracts a cult-like following, the exact nature of these followers is unclear. Are they true believers in his cause, or are they merely drawn to his power? Some theorists believe that Doomrider's followers are less a religious faction and more a group of anarchic individuals who worship the chaos and freedom he represents. Others suggest that Doomrider's followers are manipulated by his own will, drawn to him as a force that promises ultimate liberation from the oppressive structures of the Imperium and chaos alike. The ambiguity surrounding his followers raises further questions about Doomrider's influence over the galaxy and his ability to rally others to his cause. There is also the lingering question of whether Doomrider's transformation represents an ultimate victory or a tragic downfall. While many fans see his ascension as a triumph of personal power and freedom, others view it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of embracing the warp. In this view, Doomrider's loss of his humanity and his complete immersion in the chaotic forces of the Immaterium make him a tragic figure, one who has sacrificed his soul for the promise of limitless power. This duality within Doomrider's character has led to ongoing debates among fans about the nature of his transformation. Is Doomrider truly free, or has he become a slave to the very forces he sought to control? The questions surrounding his fate continue to spark discussions about the nature of chaos, freedom, and power within the Warhammer 40k universe. Another intriguing theory is the possibility that Doomrider is not a single individual, but rather a manifestation of a broader concept, perhaps an ideal or a symbol of the chaotic forces within the warp. Could it be that Doomrider is not one man, but a series of individuals who have taken up his mantle, embodying the same destructive, untamed energy that he represents? This theory proposes that Doomrider is more of a legend than a singular being, with multiple iterations of his persona emerging throughout the ages. Each incarnation of Doomrider would carry the same ideals of freedom and chaos, but with different motivations and methods. This idea introduces the possibility that Doomrider's legacy is not tied to a single individual, but to an ongoing force that transcends the boundaries of time and space. Finally, the ultimate fate of Doomrider remains uncertain. What lies ahead for this chaotic being? Will he continue to shape the galaxy through destruction, or is there a grander purpose to his existence that has yet to be revealed? Some fans speculate that Doomrider's story is far from over, and that his legend is destined to play a key role in the future of the Warhammer 40k universe. His potential for both creation and destruction makes him a wild card in the ever-evolving conflict between chaos and the Imperium, and his actions may yet alter the course of history. The unanswered questions surrounding Doomrider's future only add to his mystique, leaving fans eagerly awaiting the next chapter in his wild and unpredictable journey. Doomrider's transformation and his rise as the warp's wildest legend are likely to have far-reaching consequences for the entire Warhammer 40k universe, both in the short term and the distant future. His actions, driven by an insatiable need for chaos, freedom, and the raw power of the Immaterium, have already begun to shape the galaxy in profound ways. As he continues to navigate his existence as a being of pure warp energy, his influence is bound to continue growing, reshaping the galaxy in unpredictable and potentially catastrophic ways. The ultimate impact of his rise is one of immense speculation, as it is difficult to predict whether his legacy will be one of destruction or liberation, or whether the consequences of his power will lead to a new era of uncertainty for all factions involved. In the immediate future, Doomrider's actions will likely continue to destabilize the galaxy in ways that ripple through both the forces of chaos and the Imperium. The balance of power between the various factions, already fragile, will be pushed to new extremes. The Imperium of Man, always engaged in a brutal war to preserve its dominance, faces an even more dangerous and unpredictable enemy in the form of Doomrider. The full extent of his power, no longer bound by mortal constraints, makes him an existential threat capable of striking at the very heart of the Imperium. Entire systems could fall into anarchy or chaos as the influence of the warp deepens and spreads across the galaxy, driven by Doomrider's ever-growing power. His very presence in battle is enough to destabilize Imperial positions, and his wild, unpredictable nature makes him an unparalleled force of destruction. For the forces of chaos, Doomrider's influence is equally profound, although his role within the greater structure remains undefined. As a being untethered by the influence of any one chaos god, Doomrider challenges the status quo of the warp itself. He represents a fundamental shift in how the forces of chaos are organized and function. In his wake, new factions may form, others who seek to embrace his freedom-driven chaotic path rather than following the rigid doctrines and goals set forth by the gods. Doomrider's example might inspire others to forsake their loyalty to the gods and embrace pure, untamed chaos, leading to internal strife within the chaos forces. At the same time, the existing gods of chaos, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh, may see Doomrider as a rogue element that undermines their carefully constructed hierarchies and structures. His rise could lead to conflicts within the warp itself, as the gods vie for control of the forces that he represents. In the worst case, Doomrider's growing influence could lead to a schism in chaos, dividing the forces into rival factions, each seeking to impose its own version of chaos on the galaxy. Yet, there is also the potential for Doomrider to become a unifying figure within chaos, his rebellious, untamed nature inspiring new forms of worship and devotion. His followers, drawn by the promise of absolute freedom and the destruction of all boundaries, might form a new, powerful cult of personality. In the long term, this could give rise to a new wave of chaos-fueled warfare, where followers of Doomrider seek to impose a new order, one that is driven by pure chaos, unfettered by the limitations of traditional power structures. Such a shift could destabilize the entire galaxy, as Doomrider's followers would be compelled to challenge the established order wherever it exists, whether in the Imperium, among the Chaos forces, or in the realms of the Xenos. The consequences of Doomrider's continued rise are not limited to the forces of chaos and the Imperium. His actions could affect the very fabric of reality itself, especially as he continues to manipulate and warp the Immaterium. The more he exploits the energies of the warp, the greater the risk of permanent damage to the fabric of space and time. His wild, uncontrolled power might create rifts in reality that could open permanent portals to the warp, allowing the forces of chaos to spill out into the material universe in unprecedented ways. This could lead to widespread chaos across the galaxy, as entire star systems and sectors are consumed by the uncontrolled energies of the Immaterium. The presence of such rifts could lead to new realms of existence where the laws of physics, time, and space are no longer valid, further eroding the stability of the galaxy. In the longer term, Doomrider's influence on the warp itself may lead to a fundamental shift in the Immaterium's structure. The warp, as it currently exists, is a realm shaped by the whims and desires of the Chaos gods, with their forces and followers acting as instruments of their will. However, Doomrider's nature as a force of pure, untamed chaos challenges this order. If Doomrider continues to grow in power and influence, he could potentially challenge the very foundation of the warp, leading to a new era of instability in the immaterium. The gods of chaos, whose power is rooted in the collective emotions and desires of their followers, might find themselves unable to maintain control over the realm they have shaped. The warp could become even more unpredictable and dangerous, with its energies no longer directed by any specific force or entity. This could lead to a collapse of the established power structures within the warp, with consequences for all factions that rely on its power, including the Imperium and the forces of chaos alike. On the flip side, some theorists argue that Doomrider's rise could ultimately lead to a greater degree of freedom and liberation, particularly for those oppressed by the structures of the Imperium or the rigid rules of chaos. His path represents a rejection of all authority, a defiance of the established powers that seek to control the galaxy. For the downtrodden, the rebels, and those who seek to escape the tyranny of both the Imperium and the gods of chaos, Doomrider's rise could represent a beacon of hope. In this light, Doomrider could become the catalyst for a new wave of liberation, where individuals are freed from the oppressive regimes that seek to control them, and the galaxy is reshaped by forces driven by chaos and individual will. However, this potential for liberation comes at a high cost. The chaos unleashed by Doomrider's actions would inevitably lead to widespread destruction and suffering. His influence could bring about the downfall of countless civilizations, as entire worlds are consumed by the violence and instability that accompany such a chaotic force. While some may find freedom in the wake of his rise, it would come at the expense of countless others who would be caught in the crossfire. The galaxy, already a place of unrelenting war, could become even more fragmented, with factions fighting for dominance in a world where the boundaries between reality and the immaterium have become ever more porous. The long-term significance of Doomrider's transformation and rise to power is not just a matter of what he will do, but of what his existence represents. Doomrider embodies the chaotic, unpredictable forces that have always existed in the universe, forces that refuse to be contained or controlled by any single power. His rise marks a turning point in the galaxy, where the traditional structures of order and control are increasingly questioned, and where the forces of chaos have the potential to reshape everything. Whether this leads to an age of destruction, liberation, or something in between remains to be seen. One thing is certain: Doomrider's legacy will continue to haunt the galaxy for generations to come, and the consequences of his actions will echo through the warp and the material universe for eons.